wind carried the smell of rotting fish, and copper coins through the open window of the Cartography Guild. Kira Vance bent over her drafting table, squinting at the coastline she had redrawn 3 times already. Her fingers were stained with ink, and a smudge of charcoal marked her left cheek where she had rubbed it without thinking. "You have made the harbor too wide again," old Brennan said from behind her. He leaned over her shoulder, his breath smelling of the mint leaves he chewed constantly. "Lord Cassius will not pay for a map that shows his ships an extra mile of sailing." She set down her pen and stretched her cramped fingers. "Lord Cassius can sail into a reef for all I care. The harbor is the size it actually is. The harbor is the size the client wants it to be." Brennan patted her shoulder and shuffled back to his own desk. "Your mother understood that. She knew when accuracy mattered and when coin mattered more." Kira's jaw tightened. She picked up her pen again and said nothing. The guild door banged open, and her younger brother Tam stumbled in, his dock worker's clothes soaked with spray, and his face flushed from running. He was 18 now, tall and gangly, with their mother's dark eyes and their father's crooked nose. "You will never believe what I just saw," he said, bracing himself against the doorframe to catch his breath. A seeker went mad right on the loading dock, started screaming about fire falling from the sky, and tried to claw his own eyes out. The throne guards had to drag him away. Kira kept her eyes on her map. That is what happens when you bond with those things. The visions eat your mind until there is nothing left but nightmares. He had 3 shards on him. 3. Tam crossed the room and dropped into the chair beside her desk. Can you imagine seeing 3 different futures at once? No wonder he cracked. "I do not have to imagine it." She finally looked up at him, and her voice came out sharper than she intended. "I watched it happen to Mother for 2 years before it killed her. I do not need your dock stories to remind me." Tam's face fell. He looked away, picking at a splinter on the edge of her desk. "I was not trying to remind you of anything. I just thought it was interesting." The silence stretched between them until Brennan cleared his throat loudly. "Kira, Lord Cassius arrives tomorrow morning. He wants to discuss the northern route in person before he commits to the expedition. I expect you to be here at dawn with a finished draft." She nodded without turning around. "I will be here." Tam stood and moved toward the door, his shoulders hunched. He paused with his hand on the frame. "I am making fish stew tonight, if you want to come home before midnight for once." "I will try." She dipped her pen in the inkwell. "And Tam, take your medicine before you start cooking. I can hear you wheezing from here." He coughed as if to prove her point, then disappeared into the afternoon light. The next morning brought fog so thick that Kira could barely see the guild's front steps. She arrived before dawn as promised, her finished map rolled under her arm and her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. Lord Cassius was already waiting inside, a tall man with silver hair and the kind of expensive clothes that announced wealth without shouting it. "Miss Vance." He extended his hand, and she shook it briefly. "Your master speaks highly of your precision. I require precision for this journey. Where exactly are you trying to go?" She unrolled her map on the central table and weighted the corners with brass paperweights. Brennan mentioned the northern wastes, but that covers a great deal of territory. Cassius produced a smaller map from his coat, hand-drawn and old, the paper yellowed at the edges. He laid it beside hers and pointed to a mountain range she recognized. There is a valley here, between these two peaks. My sources tell me a significant deposit of crystal fragments lies buried beneath an ancient temple. Kira kept her expression neutral. You are a collector, then. I am a scholar, he smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. The shards contain knowledge, Miss Vance, pieces of a prophecy that once guided our entire civilization. I do not seek power from them. I seek understanding. Understanding drove my mother insane. The words came out before she could stop them. She straightened and folded her arms. But that is not my concern. You want a route to this valley, and I can provide one. The fee is 200 gold marks, half now and half when you return. Cassius raised an eyebrow. That is considerably more than Brennan quoted. Brennan does not know about the medicine my brother needs, or the fact that the northern passes are crawling with bandits this time of year. She met his gaze without blinking. You are paying for my expertise and my silence. The throne does not look kindly on expeditions to crystal deposits. He studied her for a long moment, then reached into his coat and produced a leather purse that clinked heavily. 100 marks now. 100 when I return, and you will accompany the expedition as navigator. Her stomach dropped. That was not part of the arrangement. It is now. He set the purse on the table between them. I have lost 2 expeditions to poor navigation in the past year. I will not lose a third. You will guide us to the valley, and you will guide us home again. The journey should take no more than 3 weeks. 3 weeks away from Tam. 3 weeks closer to the crystals she had sworn never to touch. She stared at the purse, calculating how many months of medicine it would buy, how many meals it would put on their table. Fine, she picked up the purse and tucked it into her belt. But I do not touch any shards, and I do not participate in whatever ritual you are planning. I am there to read maps and nothing else. Agreed. Cassius rolled up his old map and slipped it back into his coat. We leave at dawn tomorrow. Pack light. The journey north took 12 days through increasingly hostile terrain. Cassius traveled with a caravan of 6 wagons, 20 guards, and a locked chest that he kept in his personal wagon at all times. Kira rode at the front with the lead driver, consulting her maps and calling out directions, while trying to ignore the strange pulling sensation in her chest that grew stronger with each mile. On the 13th day, the bandits came. They struck at dusk, pouring out of the rocks on either side of the narrow pass like water through a broken dam. Kira threw herself from the wagon as arrows whistled overhead, rolling into the cover of a boulder, while screams and the clash of steel filled the air. She pressed her back against the stone and watched Lord Cassius's guards fall one by one, outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Cassius himself made it halfway to her position before an arrow took him in the throat. He collapsed face down in the dirt, his hand still reaching toward his wagon, toward the chest that hummed with a sound Kira could feel in her teeth. The bandits swarmed the wagons, tearing through supplies and fighting over coins. One of them kicked open the locked chest, and the humming stopped. Kira saw the shard before she understood what she was looking at. It was white, pure white, shaped like a teardrop, and glowing faintly in the fading light. The bandit who had opened the chest reached for it, and something in Kira's chest lurched so violently that she gasped. She was moving before she made the decision to move. Her body carried her across the blood-soaked ground, past the bodies of guards and bandits alike, toward the chest, and the shard that called to her like a voice she had known all her life. The bandit turned at the sound of her footsteps, but she was faster, her hand closing around the crystal before he could react. The world exploded into light. She saw herself standing at an altar, a great crystal reforming in the air before her. She saw a choice being made, a hand reaching out, a word being spoken. She saw the world ending in fire, in flood, in silence. She saw it transforming into something new, something terrifying, something beautiful. She saw herself dying at the hands of soldiers in black armor, the symbol of the blind throne emblazoned on their chests. When the vision released her, she was lying on her back in the dirt, the shard seared into her palm like a brand. The mark glowed faintly, pulsing with her heartbeat. The bandits were gone, fled, or dead, and the caravan lay in ruins around her. Kira sat up slowly, her head pounding and her vision swimming. She looked at her palm, at the teardrop shape burned into her skin, and she understood with terrible clarity that her life, as she knew it, had just ended. She had to get back to Saltmere. She had to warn Tam, gather supplies, disappear before the throne learned what she carried. The visions had shown her what happened if she was caught. She would not let that future come to pass.